The Earth is heating up, but some communities are feeling the burn far more than others. Indigenous peoples worldwide face disproportionate impacts as our climate unravels. Their deep ties to the land leave them exposed as weather grows extreme. From the Amazon to the Arctic, indigenous livelihoods and cultures are under threat. So what happens when homelands disappear? Join us as we explore the activism arising in response and why solidarity with indigenous struggles is crucial. Can we stand together to protect those most vulnerable in this race against time? Welcome back to ArchaeoTrek. Impacts of climate change on indigenous communities. Rising temperatures are affecting indigenous farming and hunting practices that have endured for centuries. Traditional knowledge and indicators used to plan agricultural cycles are being confused by increasingly unpredictable weather. Persistent droughts and heat waves threaten staple crops and livestock that communities rely on for sustenance and trade. Floods, storms, and wildfires triggered by climate change can wipe out harvests, food stores, and livelihoods in one fell swoop. In the Arctic, thinning and retreating sea ice is reducing opportunities for subsistence hunting and fishing central to Inuit and other northern indigenous cultures. Thawing permafrost and changes in snow depth are hindering the ability to herd reindeer, a keystone of Sami identity, nutrition, and economies. In North America, altering migration routes of caribou, moose, and other animals due to changing weather conditions disrupts hunting and gathering activities that secure indigenous diets, trade relationships, and cultural practices. In the Amazon and wider Latin America, severe droughts and extreme weather events have taken a heavy toll on indigenous agriculture and food security. Crop yields are declining due to heat, pests, and insufficient rainfall, while floods and landslides wipe out fields. Vital water sources are drying up for indigenous communities, livestock, and staple crops. Fish numbers are falling as changing rainfall affects reproduction cycles in rivers like the Amazon, Orinoco, and Magdalena, impacting nutrition and trade. Resilience through indigenous knowledge. Loss of biodiversity and increasing unpredictability of weather patterns undermine indigenous knowledge systems connecting communities to the land, wildlife, water sources, and crop planting cycles. Sacred natural sites holding deep cultural meaning are being degraded by the encroaching impacts of climate change, severing spiritual relationships. These interlinked effects strike at the core of indigenous cosmologies, governance systems, ways of life, identity, and belief systems intricately bound to the local natural environment. While indigenous communities are acutely impacted by climate change, their resilience and adaptability built up over centuries of environmental flux should not be underestimated. Indigenous knowledge systems and cosmologies offer invaluable insights into how humanity can live sustainably within the limits of the natural world. Generations of keen observation, experiential learning, and oral transmission equip indigenous peoples with time-tested strategies to adapt to shifting conditions. These include moving agricultural activities to new suitable locations as the climate changes, relying on nuanced traditional indicators to plan farming practices amid variable weather, and leveraging deep ties to the land and sea to detect incremental environmental changes. Indigenous seed-saving and agrobiodiversity techniques boost climate resilience. The Anishinaabe people in the Great Lakes region of North America are revitalizing the practice of growing heritage varieties of manoomin, wild rice, which is ecologically adapted to local wetlands. This enhances food sovereignty and resilience to climate impacts like flooding and drought. Indigenous activism and climate justice. The outsized impacts of climate change on indigenous communities magnify existing systemic injustices and power imbalances. Centuries of colonialism, dispossession of lands, erosion of self-governance, lack of political representation, and socio-economic marginalization all compound the vulnerability of indigenous peoples. Climate change exacerbates these intersecting crises, but indigenous communities are not just passive victims. They are leading powerful activism in response at local, national, and global levels to demand climate justice. The Standing Rock Water Protectors demonstrations against the Dakota Access Pipeline cutting across Lakota territories ignited a worldwide movement for indigenous rights, land protection, and environmental justice. Indigenous activists are mobilizing to enshrine the rights of nature in law and governance. At the UN, leaders like Autumn Peltier and Hindu Umaru Ibrahim are advocating to amplify indigenous voices in climate policymaking and fund indigenous-led solutions. First Nations in Canada's tar sands region are challenging destructive fossil fuel projects through non-violent direct action and the courts. The Sarayaku people of Ecuador won a landmark case at the Inter-American Court of Human Rights to stop oil drilling planned illegally on their rainforest lands without consent. Solidarity and inclusion of Indigenous voices. At the grassroots level, Indigenous communities leverage traditional knowledge to build local resilience through community-led adaptation and mitigation initiatives. Tribes across North America are initiating sustainable food sovereignty programs, drawing on ancestral agricultural wisdom to adapt to changing climatic conditions and reduce emissions. Indigenous peoples in the Philippines revived traditional seafaring methods to map coral reefs threatened by bleaching, winning recognition of their marine stewardship rights. Yet, Indigenous voices calling for climate justice and environmental protection often remain unheard and marginalized in policymaking. As biodiverse Indigenous territories crucial for carbon sequestration face ever greater threats of deforestation, extractivism, and pollution, solidarity with frontline Indigenous struggles is urgent, not just for moral reasons, but to secure a livable climate future for all. True climate justice demands standing in solidarity with Indigenous nations as they defend sacred lands and waters under existential threat. It means respecting Indigenous self-determination and sovereignty over stolen territories. We must open spaces for Indigenous voices in decision-making at all levels to transform exclusionary power structures. Policymakers, corporations, and civil society groups need to engage authentically with Indigenous representatives as equal partners with critical knowledge, not just stakeholders. The Sami people in Scandinavia leverage their reindeer herding knowledge to monitor changes in Arctic ecosystems and inform climate adaptation plans. Their observations fill gaps in top-down environmental monitoring. Indigenous traditional knowledge deserves much greater recognition in climate research and policy as an invaluable living empirical resource, with permission and proper attribution. Indigenous-led adaptation and mitigation initiatives demonstrate how to foster resilience by restoring reciprocal relationships between human communities and ecosystems. We all have a responsibility to learn humbly from frontline Indigenous climate struggles and support calls for environmental justice rooted in Indigenous rights and wisdom. This could mean lobbying governments to fully implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, donating time or resources to Indigenous-led resistance movements, and paying more than lip service to consulting Indigenous groups, instead providing resources to elevate Indigenous-led solutions. Amazonian Indigenous researchers are expanding the network of sentinel forests to monitor ecological changes, leveraging their deep place-based knowledge and expertise in biocultural approaches. The way forward. The climate emergency demands a transformation of our relationship with the living world and each other. Indigenous cultures offer generational wisdom on how to walk lightly upon the earth, nurture resilience, and live within natural limits. Their worldviews and practices demonstrate possibilities for just, sustainable societies built on reciprocity with human and other-than-human communities. It is time we listen. The climate crisis spotlights injustice, but Indigenous knowledge lights the way forward. By standing in solidarity and lifting up Indigenous voices, we can foster resilience and chart a just path. What is your role in this collective journey? How will you amplify marginalized voices,